Okay, so I'm going to add on. I promised you I was going to talk a little bit more about reloading. Thinking I might do some reloading with these big cases sometime and kind of put on a reloading seminar just to illustrate what's important in reloading and what's not from a person who actually does shoot little bug hole groups. What the pros use out there that are winning and why. Most importantly is why. And it's funny, the difference between daydreaming about a project like this and actually going out and doing it. There's just hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. And that's why when somebody asks me, how do I go shoot little groups or how do I go out and get into bench rest competition, I say there's one and only one way. Go buy from a known maker a 6 PPC. Yeah, there's other things that 20 years down the road you could compete with, but right now. And whether that's true or not, Jim Steckel campaigned the 6BR just because he was pissed off that we were using a Russian cartridge for a long time. And I don't know that he ever convinced himself or anybody that it beat the PPC. But it's not just the round. It's a whole industry. It's a whole support. It's everything from the weights to the recoils to the bag setups to the contours of the stocks to the way the stocks recoil. There's like 40 different things that are important, and I'm trying to apply them to this. But there are so many ways that the rules change when you go to this big cartridge. I remember I was talking to I've kind of decided to not use names on this because I'm a kind of a jerk and there are certain people who don't want their names associated with me, but trust me, he's one of the top 5 gun builders on the planet. And he was saying how he quit building ultra heavies and cruisers and 60-pound guns and even rail guns and stuff because it's such a pain packing the stuff around. Everything is hard. And that's true. These guns are even heavy enough that handling the guns isn't the whole part of the problem though. Now, just the size of the reloading trays, just everything about them is in such a way. I want little reloading trays like this. I want to be able to go out and load 5 rounds at a time. I go 2, 2, 2, 2, then 3, 3, 3 to test concept, and then I start shooting 5-shot groups in groups of 5 to get 25 round aggregates. And that shows me that on one given day, under one given set of conditions and one given sore shoulder, I managed to shoot an aggregate 25 rounds plus siders plus wind. There's a whole, it's kind of like this camera thing. It takes an hour or two to set my cameras up to give you a live real-time feed. So there's not that many times I'm going to do that. And I remember the first time I went and shot with a pro, I had a couple of guns that had been put together by pros and one that I'd put together myself, and I had a whole list of things I was going to do. We were going to the range. I left the house at 5:30 to meet him up at a range in Castle Rock, and we were going to go shoot all day, and I was all pumped up. Well, he was sitting by the side of the road drinking his coffee when I got there. Obviously time wasn't an issue, but we got out to shoot, and the difference between his world and my world was amazing. I went out to the 100 and the 200 yard and I covered the whole back because this was the middle of the week. I was self-employed at the time and I could go meet him in the middle of the week. I put targets up like crazy. He put up 2. 2 little bench rest targets. And he was a big guy. He didn't want to walk back and forth. And I said, hey, if you need to set more targets, he said, no, I'm just going to do 2. I probably put 50 rounds downrange while he put a few. He shot 2 groups. He shot some practice groups in the corners, and he shot a lot of siders, and he tested conditions, and he tested bullets. He shot 2 groups. And I went, wow, that's a whole day to shoot 2 groups. So it's pretty hard for me to do what I do, which is testing all this stuff without streamlining. So I have to streamline to where I can go bat, 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 and along with that is all the maintenance and the cleaning that has to be done. And this is not a simple, I don't show you that out there, but after I wrapped up from the last shooting, I got to stop cleaning the gun while it's still warm. That's a Lilja chrome moly barrel on there on the screen door, and I don't want to Not that it needs break-in, but I don't know that much about the 50s. I'm pretty much cleaning every time I quit shooting a gun at this point in its life. It's got 20, 30 rounds. I don't remember how many I did through the recoil sled, somewhere between 10 and 12, 14. Enough to form some brass cases and check the parameters and loosen some primers and proof test and all stuff that has nothing to do with accuracy, but just has to do with proving the facility of an unknown cartridge. To me, an unknown cartridge. Cartridge is still completely unknown, but already it's more known than it was. So I'm going to talk about how I load this and how I made up stuff like this, because this is what I want. I want these little handy things. So I'm going to go ahead and take you over to the loading area. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't need to bring these over. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how I make this, how I made this, just did. I don't know what this is, except that it's MTM. Normally I can say MTM box blah blah blah. All this says on it is 12 gauge in one of the holes. So this is probably the MTM. I mean, it is the MTM 12 gauge box, and there must be only one of them, and there's no model numbers or anything on it. So let me get down here. I realize I'm holding the thing out of the camera and yakking my head again. I do that kind of stuff because I'm a dumbass. Okay. So 12 gauge box. That's what I decided to try to use. It holds some bullets in here, and it comes with 2 of these racks. All of this is in a removable rack marked 12 gauge. The problem with the 12 gauge is that the difference between the two is that the 12 gauge hole is a little smaller than BMG. If I jam one of these down in, I can actually pick up the rack. It doesn't come out easily. I've scratched around in these ones and got them to where they come out pretty easily. But they still, like you just saw that. I can get this to stick. It wants to lift. I don't like that. So, it comes with a rack down and a rack up because you put in, must be 50, 2 3/4 inch 12, it's a trap box. Then you put the upper rack in, and you put in the rest, so it must hold 100 rounds. Oh, here's a bunch of suggested 12 loads. Oh, well, I don't care about all that. So, that's what I used. And yes, I did go buy a couple of 50 BMG loading blocks, but they're not much good to me. They're not very useful. As I told you, I'm storing my cases. This is the stuff for the screen door. This is the stuff in here. These ones got fired a little hot. My proof one is in here. This has got, this one took some heat. Like the primer, I could fire it again, but it probably leaked the primer at 2,200 feet per second. Pretty light. So this is how I carry them in my loading blocks. I had to run into town today because I started loading and I realized I want more of this. I took that upper rack out of that MTM box and I ran it up on the bandsaw. And I bandsawed it in half. And I made it into 2. And then I went over to my side bins and I found some washers that fit in here. And I started putting washers in the bottom. And a stack of 5 washers brings it to where these don't hang up. There's enough of a taper because it's a molded, this is extruded, no, pressured up, plastic blown into a mold, cast. Anyway, there's a necessary clearance to get the tooling up out of here when they disassemble the thing after blowing the plastic into it. So each of these holes exhibits some taper. I've never measured it, I don't care. I'm just saying that this unmodified one sticks on there. These ones that are modified don't. I can lift in and out. That's what makes a reloading block useful, is that you be able to lift in and out. So, I started dropping, well, 5 washers a piece, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. I ran out of washers pretty quick. So I had to run into town today and buy another bag of washers. But here's the thing, in the spirit of my thing, this bag of washers, $6.35 at Wilco, because they sell this stuff for $2.99 a pound. And so I buy it by the pound. I take a stack of washers and I drop it in the hole. Of course, some jackal got the wrong size in there. But here we go. We got 5, we drop it in the hole. We got 5. I could do this all day. Now these drop in, and they don't bottom out, and you can pick them right back out, which is efficacious. It's handy. It's useful. Now, because I'm worried about these falling out, I put tape over these, but then I also realized that how often you drop a loading block. When you do, you got bigger problems than the washers falling out on the floor. You've got cases and powder, and so realistically, those washers in the bottom of these holes probably would never be a problem. But as I'm driving down the road thinking about it, I'm thinking, okay, if it is a problem, all I have to do is take shoe goo or goop or a caulking gun and reach down and go blurp into each of these holes and stick it to the bottom, and a little ooze there, and you'll have a removable rubber, silicone, whatever. So, don't think there's any big problems with that. Now what I'm going to do is, should just decap if I got something that's not done, and size and go through and reload. Well, here we go. These ones here can be decapped and loaded. And I'm just going to show you my little deal here and show you that for not a whole lot of money, you can set yourself up. Now that said, I've got to tell you, over on this side of the room, that Charge Master right there was full when I started shooting for this series. I reloaded 3, 6, 9 rounds, and that was full. That being, this Charge Master right here was full to within 2 inches of the top, because when I started loading, I decided to load to the kernel. So I throw a charge, which is pretty dead burn full, by the way. Bring it over to my other scale. I've shown in other videos how I go about this. I'm going to zero this and cover it back up. That's another reason I ran over here. I've been in and out these doors so much my scales are getting all monkey. This one won't even, this thing is as coarse as a freaking thrower. Yeah, it did zero. So anyway, just boring you with details, but the point is, that thing is full enough to the top that as I'm loading, I throw an undercharge. And then I was just, normally I set some powder off to the side that I can pick from to bring my stuff up to 0. I throw a slight undercharge. In this case I'm going to I think it was 110 grains, 120 grains, whatever it was. I throw a slight undercharge, and then I reach up into the top of the powder measure, in this case, because I could, and trickle the last couple of grains in, bring it right up to 0. I was blown away. I reloaded these cases that few times, and my powder measure's half empty. Next thing I know, I'm loading for the last ones. I came whipping in here, went and bought my watch, came whipping back in here, and went to load my, for this sequence that I just recorded and am sending out. And I couldn't reach my grains of powder anymore. I was convinced my fingers had grown shorter, but no, the level just dropped that quick. So, my homemade stuff here, everything has been turned and modified. This right here is a Lee 50BMG-1 cedar. It doesn't even work. This is the black, this is the top that I put in the lathe, burned out so that it goes way down the ogive to where it touches almost, because the land's engaged, right? This is a secant ogive, as you can see. And the Lands gauge on these way up here, right at this corner. So I wanted to get my bullet seating up near this corner too. Just, I don't know if it's better or worse. I just feel like it's better supported there. And I would rather bend the bullet up at the origination of the Lands, where it deforms rather than screwing the point up. Because some of these points, oddly enough, are actually just petals folded together. And you start seating bullets way up here and using any extra pressure, and it'll actually sometimes pop visible. I mean, as it goes down, it tries to open that flower up a little bit. So I try to stay away from this. I consider this area to be delicate. I want to be seating down somewhere right here where the thickest, meatiest, the very beginning, the origination, where this is nice and dense. These are all just, I'm just puking things out of my head bone. But anyway, that's what drives me. So these are the cases I just fired. I'm going to go ahead and just see if I can go through a quickie sequence. I use the tiniest little bit of wax, pretty much as little as I can. And I had to make it, this is why I have these rings and stuff. I want to show you this part of it to show that I can fairly quickly. Now, I think I'm just going to do one, and here's the reason. No matter how many times I say it, and no matter how thinly you slice it, these are big. They do not size easily. So, I don't even know if I can size this, or if I'm going to have to get up in front of the camera. It's designed for it, and it's fine. And I need to check my fitments and stuff and make sure that with all my modifications, what I've done is I burned off the expander ball on this replaceable now. Cut this out. This is all in other episodes. And I've taken the decapping pin, burned off the expander ball, turned out the die, and it's now, I'm not even going to go through the measurements that are on here, but you can tell from looking at this that my chamber is fatter than mother. I opened that chamber up big time, and then I had to open up the die to match it. So, there's our decap stroke, and I wasn't able to just reach out and do it without making grunty noises, so instead I stood up and poked my butt at the camera and let you watch that while I completed my stroke. No innuendo intended in any way. Now, of course we'll do a whole series of these. 3 or 5 or 6 or 20 or 50. So I don't have to do this all the time, but I'm just going to go through the whole change out procedure with you so you can see what I'm doing here. These are the parts that come with the Lee kit, and I find them useful. This little piece right here is the primer seeder. It goes down here in the bottom, so now we've taken the die out, we've put in another shell holder up here. And now, I just go grab a primer. I did that. I thought I was in the camera and I wasn't, it doesn't matter. So I dropped out one primer, stick it in here. And it's that simple. After that sequence is over, this pops back out. This comes back out. Back in. We're set up for back to the decapping phase. And now this is the reason that I wanted to refurbish this old A4 Big Macs, is because I don't want to change the whole thing out again into the seating. And I mean, that gets to me a little too out of hand to even keep my mind clear while I'm doing a series of tests. So I have to have another die, another press set up here. I've got presses all over the room that I use for various things, and I pick them up at garage sales, and I care less about linearity than any normal person, and I make extremely straight cases. So this is the die that has been modified with the collar. The seating stem has been modified and burned out to where it seats way up here at the tip of the ogive. And I don't have any powder, and I'm not going to go get powder because it takes an act of Congress to get that much powder in there. I had to build a little extension down here, which is meaningless to all you guys, but this particular press didn't, blah, blah, blah. Probably cost me 30 bucks to make this press work. And now, this is just conventional stuff. It just, I obviously didn't seed it. I seeded it down into there about that far, but that's the thing. This is ready to go again. And we're going to be, I don't think I'm going to come back and revisit any of this. I just wanted to show that you don't have to break the bank to get set up for loading 50 BMG. What does break the bank is the fact that these little guys are $3 to $5 a piece. I've got a bunch of different brands. For me, this will all pay off in the end because I'll have to pay for my components, but I'll just turn around and sell the guns when I'm done, when I need the money, and I will have learned a whole lot, and hopefully will have entertained you people in the process. That's my biggest thing, is to try to come up with something that'll be beneficial to somebody. I know that I'm a gun freak, and in all of my time I have asked questions of people all around the nation for the last 40 years, and I've got a mixed bag of answers, to put it in short. Some of them good, some of them bad, some of them in the middle, some of them opinions, some of them facts. But for the most part, I've had to go out and do stuff myself to really get down to the nitty-gritty. Started by buying a known paradigm, which is somebody else's iteration of the PPC, and then somebody else's, and then somebody else's, and then somebody else's. I have PPCs built by 4 different professionals that all have different ways about them. They all work. Now I'm sharing with you my voyage to try to make the 50 BMG into a BR gun. I know for a simple fact I can easily turn it into a BR gun in a 30-40 pound competition rifle. But that's not my goal. I want them all to shoot them little one-hole groups at a useful velocity and still be able to be carried around. The problem is you can't have your cake and eat it too. So to get the weight down, you got to shrink the barrels down. To get the recoil down, you got to put on huge muzzle brakes. So you end up with this wizard stick with a knob on the end like you wouldn't believe. A couple of these are going to look funny when I go out to shoot them because the barrel's this big around, the muzzle brake is this big around, and when you figure the forces on that, trying to contain it, you'll soon figure out why I'm so obsessive about that joint. Not just the barrel joint, but the joint, the interface between that aluminum stock. I actually think my biggest failure is going to be the Macmillan stock. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get it to tighten up. We'll see.